They call it the Jekyll and Hyde effect. One moment you're a respectable, upright citizen, then there's a slurp of some magical potion, and you become a monster. But not so fast. That's not quite the way Robert Louis Stevenson wrote it. The Dr. Jekyll that we know comes from the movies.
This is Dr. Jekyll, one man with two faces and a mind split in two.
Will we ever know who we really are?
We all dream of being someone else. The only problem is, if you let it, like a cancer, it will consume you.
So many characters in literature step out from the pages of a book to have a life of their own. Their depictions change. But in this case, while the mild-mannered Dr. Jekyll remains broadly the same, Mr. Hyde can become anything we want him or her to be.
It's Hyde, isn't it? How is your brother?
He hasn't been himself of late.
This is the new Dr. Jekyll, the most evil woman you'll ever see. This is the sensuous Sister Hyde, the most evil man you'll ever meet.
And in this Bernard Bresslaw comedy, Mr. Hyde becomes a London East End gangster. The depictions of Mr. Hyde in the movies vary from the sublime, sadly, to the farcical.
In return for your services, do you want to go home?
Home. Home's where the heart is, that's what they say. And I have been missing London so.
Now, even though Jerry Lewis's Nutty Professor is a comedy, and his eventual suave Mr. Hyde is a thinly veiled vindictive hit, I think, on his former partner Dean Martin, this is one of the closest versions of Stevenson's true intentions.
I felt younger, lighter, happier in body. Within, I was conscious of a heady recklessness, a solution of the bonds of obligation, an unknown but not an innocent freedom of the soul. And the thought in that moment braced and delighted me like wine.
We got a world that swings.
So let's take a look at that world that swings, swinging London Victorian style. England was a once rural country that was fast becoming an urban industrial one. The population in cities like London grew exponentially. If you were rich, or a member of the rising middle classes, you were busy and optimistic. But if you were poor and disadvantaged, you were surrounded by squalor and hunger and poverty and crime. Cannabis and opium and cocaine were available freely over the pharmacy counter, yet the misuse of these lethal substances weren't seen as a medical problem, but as moral weakness. Robert Louis Stevenson, who'd been in poor health all his life, regularly used drugs as painkillers, and naturally, he became an addict. In Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, he was describing a man destroyed from within by drugs. Remember, first the heady experience, and then the destructive one.
It was then I saw with horror what I had become. I had released not the angel from my soul, but the monster from its pit.
But why did he choose to tell his story, to frame his narrative, in the form of a man who had dual personalities? The answer is another obsession of Robert Louis Stevenson's, going back to his first published work. It was a play he co-wrote with a friend. It was called Deacon Brodie or the Double Life. William Brodie was a cabinet maker by day and a criminal by night. A pretty mean gangster. In fact, he was so bad, he was executed in 1788. And maybe Stevenson's interest in him was spurred on by the fact that he actually owned a cabinet, a chest of drawers in his house that Brodie had made several years earlier. That's Brodie, the innocent carpenter, not Brodie the gangster. Brodie didn't need to be a criminal. He just enjoyed it. These days you just say he was an evil SOB. Robert Louis Stevenson's interest in the dual nature of man continued. He was fascinated by a mild-mannered, respectable French teacher in Edinburgh, a chap called Eugene Chantrel, who wasn't quite what he seemed. He coldly planned and then carried out the murder of his young wife. In 1878, Stevenson attended every day of Eugene Chantrel's murder trial. Chantrel poisoned his wife Elizabeth. Traces of opium were detected on her night clothes, but the opium was only used to knock her out, and as she lay unconscious in her bedroom, she died of gas poisoning, thanks to a conveniently fractured gas pipe in the room. Okay, so how do we get from Brody, the carpenter and the gangster, and Chantrel, the French teacher and the wife murderer, to the Mr. Hyde that we know and love so much, the guy with the top hat and the cape? Where does that Mr. Hyde, the sexual predator, come from? Only a year after its publication, an American actor called Richard Mansfield bought the rights to the book, and only 1 year later, in 1887, Mansfield took his production of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde on the road. The play opened in Boston and then went to New York. It toured the United States, and on the 2nd of August, 1888, it opened in London. Now, why is that an important date? 3 days after the play opened in the poverty-stricken Whitechapel district of London, outside a pub called the Angel and Crown, a woman named Martha Tabram was brutally murdered. In the months that followed, there were other murders. Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly. And if those names sound familiar to you, well, they should. They were the victims of Jack the Ripper. The embryonic Victorian tabloid press had a field day. Conspiracy theories proliferated, and a naive public grasped at any solution to the identity of Jack the Ripper, no matter how absurd. Edward Hyde on stage in costume with his top hat and cape became confused with the real serial killer. Hey, it got so bad that the actor Richard Mansfield became one of the prime suspects. After all, the murders only started days after the play opened in London, didn't it? And the perception of Mr. Hyde as a Ripper-like character has remained to the present day. The power of a literary idea is proven by its ability to survive outside the confines of the original book. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is like a musical theme on which variations are played. The earliest example comes only 6 years after Jekyll and Hyde was published. Arthur Conan Doyle wrote his own version of the dual identities plot. It's called The Man with the Twisted Lip. Sherlock Holmes investigates the disappearance of Neville Sinclair, a respected businessman. The police arrest the disfigured beggar, Hugh Boone, suspected of the murder of the missing Sinclair. Then Holmes deduces that Boone has a secret. Unknown to his wife, Sinclair's been earning his living not in a polite office, but on the streets, begging.
Gentlemen, let me introduce you to Mr. Neville Sinclair of Lee in the county of Kent.
In a famous Star Trek episode called The Enemy Within, a transporter accident splits Captain Kirk into Good Kirk and Bad Kirk.
I'm Captain Kirk!
Can half a man live? Then we'll both die.
And when I lose control, it's very dangerous to be around me.
What will happen when he unlocks the potential of his brain?
There is no limit to what he can become.
He's done awful things to people, and he'll do awful things to you.
He was always bad, and in the end he intended to tell them I killed those girls and that man, as if I could do anything except just sit and stare.
Hello, Johnny. I see you've brought us a nice new gentleman for this evening. You can call me Flora.
Hyde. Jack Hyde.
It's amazing to think that after all this time, Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde still dwell among us. But let's not forget it was Robert Louis Stevenson, the genius, who took the idea of repressed secret identities and turned them into a creepy, spectacular, and often misunderstood story